What I want to do just for a couple of minutes is take us, from the synaptic layer that Newton's talking about through the kind of reverse engineering of the behavioral layer that Mandana's talking about and Alexi's kind of business world, and zoom us all the way out to the future into Elon Musk's 2080. If he's right and if all of his bets come off and we're ending up, people in 2060 are being born on Mars, and by the age of 20 at 2080 they're saying, what should we do with our weekends? I want to look back at our planet and then our human experience inside the planet and ask, what is the value proposition of Earth? What is the value proposition of Earth to the solar system? And for me, if you look at it from that perspective, the core value is that you can live an analog existence on Earth. It's a beautifully balanced biosphere that doesn't require the machine just to exist. And so it's into that context, into that sort of value framework, that it's important to me that we are able to get back to our analog realities. I'm a millennial. I'm addicted to my phone. Some of the things that make me who I am, both the worst things that I'm ashamed to admit and the best things that really have accelerated my personal experience, all come from my relationship with this phone. So if we're asking, should we become cyborgs? I'm not sure that that's a future tense question. I think for a lot of us, we have such a kind of codependent relationship, or interdependent, hopefully, relationship with the phone, that we've already kind of crossed that path. And 4 years ago, when I left my sort of millennial internet business land and went to live in the woods, and you invite people to come into that off-grid environment, you very quickly begin to see how dependent they are on the machine already, and and to what extent they're able to function without the current relationship, with the very low bandwidth that we have just through our thumbs. All we're really talking about is extending that bandwidth, really. You go to the woods, you spend long enough there, you sit around the fire, and you realize that really when we were able to discover how to harness fire, that was the big leap in the sapient journey of being able to sort of change our relationship with the environment. And I think as we're opening up this bridge, this bandwidth between biology and machine, and letting intelligence flow between the two of them, we are opening up a bridge that is of the same sort of gravity as nothing else that's occurred in this journey other than the discovery of fire. And so when you discover fire and you start experimenting with how to harness it, obviously some people manage to do great things and other people burn their houses down with it. So I guess I'm sort of coming into this conversation, as I said, from outer space in the future, in Elon's world, and saying, given this range of approaches that we're talking about, invasive, non-invasive, how do we protect that which we value most in this human experience? And really it kind of leads me to three key questions on any of these projects, which is, what is the appropriate governance? What is the right vehicle, the right structure to hold this kind of sacred, important data that gives you access to this sort of subconscious system one experience, which is the most precious part of sort of directing who we are? What are the goals that are laced into that often come from the incentives created by the structure? And really, what are the beliefs about our philosophy of intelligence? Mandana, alluded to the idea that the brain has evolved and exists and is sustained in evolution because it is there for movement. But I would, for example, disagree that there's that teleological relationship between the brain and movement. If you look at sort of developmental psychology and how children learn to walk in play, yes, I totally agree. The fundamental relationship is one of the brain and movement, but it's not obvious that, and it's kind of laced within the linguistics, that you come up with the idea and the goal and the plan and then you go and execute it. That's not how children develop. So the relationship and sort of our ideas of what the brain creates and how that flows one way or the other into the body is very, very important. And sort of that's a bunch of research that I've done at UCL, exploring our linguistics and our interdisciplinary conception of what intelligence is. How can we make sure that biologists, machine learning experts, and psychologists are all able to talk about intelligence in a way that's cohesive and comprehensive, that allows those bridges to be built in order that we can protect that which we value most? And for me, fundamentally at the bottom of all of this, as I said, is this value proposition that humans and Earth are a place that you can, in some crazy, circumstance, actually live a kind of analog reality. When I spent a couple of days with Brian Johnson, who's the founder CEO of Kernel, who are doing neural laces, talking with his partner, she said, so, will you have that chip in the brain? And simply I'm saying, Yes, as long as I can get back to that base reality, as long as I can get back to that which I value most, which is that analog existence. And so, really, just to finish, my questions are really, what do we think are the appropriate vehicles? I won't go into it now, but that's what our experiments are about. The flow experiments are all about trying to question our philosophy of intelligence and how to protect the intuitive subconscious part of the human experience from unproven goals. And then we've been doing some liquid democracy kind of blockchain experiments, which we think might be a helpful way of both governing decision making and storing some of the most important data to us. And I guess to draw it to a close, I would just ask the rest of us on this panel, what is it that you do with the data that you receive that will give me the comfort that you are storing and handling me and my experience in a way that is safe enough, that leads to our flowing and flourishing in the future? There's no fire that's too big if you have the wisdom to know how to put it out. If you've got enough water, if you've got a big enough moat, if you've got the right amount of fuel. It goes back to Bostrom's paperclip thing, where he says about, if you set off a paperclip efficiency machine, it will turn the whole world into a paperclip. I've got no issue with the limits of where we get to on the cyborg journey. My challenge is that I don't think we're anywhere near on the governance side we don't have enough buckets of water at the moment. And that's my challenge. And you guys are building these companies right now. So we got choices about, do we allow these companies to be built under what conditions? And we need to be rolling out the wisdom carpet straight away. So my question is just how much water do we have for the size of the fire we have today, and how do we go about improving that ratio as we go, and let it grow as long as we're not burning our house down. My concern is if Mark Zuckerberg manages to manipulate that person to do whatever he wants them to do for his commercial ends of achieving whatever we want to say his capitalistic goals are. That's the concern for me. The power itself is not the concern. It's who is controlling that and for what purpose. So are they being informed and absorbing the wisdom of nature? Are they sitting in the woods? Are they meditating? Well, they'll probably behave well. Have they got somebody's commercial interests in their ear manipulating their behavior? Then I'm concerned. That's what I'm more interested in. No, just from my perspective, when you go to the meat suit side of things, the material side, and let's leave the soul question because there's more whiskey involved in that one. But I think it's not clear that we can derive any useful morality without this sort of mortality there. I'm not sure that I want to go through that experiment personally, because everything that I hold dear, the value of the moments of life, all get derived from this rough limit of mortality that we've got through our meat suits. And I would like to see everybody have a full chance. You want every flower to have its moment in the sun in that summer that it had the chance to bloom. But I'm not sure that I want to have plastic flowers. I wouldn't know how to reconstruct a values framework and a morality that had enough meaning in it for me to stay alive, frankly.